In the dead of night, a royal head fell to the straw-covered ground. A crown rolled away into the shadows, still warm with the heat of its owner's last breath. The crowds who once bowed now turned their eyes away, pretending not to see the sticky blood, pretending that kings and queens could never truly die so disgracefully. But they did. And for centuries, what happened to those severed royal heads would become one of history's strangest, most secretive stories, hidden in locked chests, spiked on gates, stolen from tombs, preserved like holy relics, or simply lost to time. Today we dig up the secrets that followed the fall of the crown. Let's begin in London, 1649. The English Civil War has torn a kingdom apart, and at its center is Charles I, a king who believed so firmly in his divine right to rule that he'd rather lose his head than give up his crown. Well, that's exactly what happened. On January 30th, 1649, Charles I stepped out onto a scaffold outside the banqueting house in Whitehall. He wore 2 shirts so he wouldn't shiver in the cold and be mistaken for trembling in fear. He addressed the crowd, laid his neck on the block, and the executioner swung the axe. One clean blow, they said, though some whispered it took 2. The king's head was lifted up for all to see, blood dripping onto the platform where the monarchy itself seemed to bleed out with him. But this was just the beginning of his head story. After the execution, Charles's head was sewn back onto his body. Royalists loyal to the crown demanded that the king be buried whole, so no relics could be paraded around by parliamentarians. His coffin was rushed to Windsor Castle, buried secretly in St. George's Chapel next to Henry VIII. But rumors lingered that grave robbers or political enemies later stole the skull to keep as a symbol of victory. To this day, no one is quite sure if what lies in Charles I's tomb really has a head attached. The whispers of the missing royal head haunt historians still. But it wasn't just kings who lost their heads. Sometimes even kings' executioners weren't safe from the curse of the severed crown. Oliver Cromwell, the Lord Protector who signed Charles I's death warrant, ruled England like a king without a crown. When Cromwell died in 1658, he was buried with ceremony and honor. But when the monarchy was restored under Charles II, revenge was swift and gruesome. On a cold January night in 1661, Cromwell's body was exhumed, dragged through the streets, publicly hanged and beheaded. 2 years after he'd already been buried, his embalmed head was stuck on a 20-foot spike above Westminster Hall, where the wind and rain slowly stripped it of flesh and the sun bleached the bone. For more than 20 years, Cromwell's skull bobbed in the London breeze, a rotting warning to anyone who thought about toppling a king again. When the pole finally broke in a storm, Cromwell's head fell to the ground. A guard scooped it up, hid it, and from there it passed through collectors hidden behind curtains, shown off in drawing rooms like a macabre treasure. By the 20th century, what was believed to be Cromwell's actual head was buried at last. In a secret ceremony at Sidney Sussex College, Cambridge. Even now they won't say exactly where. Not every royal head was so publicly displayed. Some disappeared quietly, stolen by thieves, scientists, or desperate collectors. Take Henry IV of France, known as Good King Henry. After his assassination in 1610, Henry's embalmed body lay undisturbed in the royal basilica of St. Denis, the resting place for centuries of French monarchs. But during the French Revolution, angry revolutionaries stormed the tombs. Coffins were ripped open, skulls were tossed into mass graves or taken as grim trophies. In the chaos, Henry IV's mummified head vanished. Over 200 years later, in the early 20th century, a curious skull turned up at an auction. The seller claimed it was the missing head of Henry IV, preserved through centuries in secret collections. For decades, historians argued over the authenticity. DNA tests seemed to prove it true. Then doubters stepped in again. The head passed from hand to hand until it was finally reburied in 2018. But some believe the real head is still hidden in a collector's vault, passed like a relic between the discreet and the powerful. It wasn't just kings. Some queens lost their heads too, none more famously than Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary was the cousin of Elizabeth I of England, but politics, religion, and betrayal turned cousin against cousin. Mary was accused of plotting to assassinate Elizabeth. After 19 years of imprisonment, she was found guilty and condemned to die. In 1587, Mary was led to the block at Fotheringham Castle. Her final moments were dramatic. She wore a black gown, but underneath she revealed a scarlet petticoat, the color of martyrdom. The executioner took 2 strokes to sever her head. When he lifted it up, her wig slipped off, revealing her graying hair. A small dog, hidden in her skirts, ran out whining. Mary's head was treated with a strange mixture of reverence and secrecy. It was embalmed separately, and some accounts claim parts were smuggled out by loyal servants. Her son James VI of Scotland, later James I of England, demanded she be given an honorable tomb. But rumors claim her skull went missing for decades. Some believe it lies somewhere beneath Peterborough Cathedral. Others say it was spirited away to Scotland, hidden in a castle wall to protect her legacy. Sometimes it was indeed just the head that was lost. It was the peace of mind of everyone who touched it. Richard III, the last Plantagenet king of England, died at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. His body was dragged naked through the streets, and legend says his head was struck so many times that the skull split open. For centuries, his grave's location was forgotten. It became the stuff of folklore. The king buried under a car park, the ghost of the hunchback king haunting Leicester. When archaeologists finally unearthed Richard's skeleton in 2012 beneath a modern parking lot, they found clear marks of fatal wounds and a massive slice through the base of his skull. Today, his bones rest in Leicester Cathedral, but some believe fragments of the skull were taken as relics during the Wars of the Roses, and could still be hidden in noble families' private collections. In England, they say, disturbing Richard's bones brings a curse. The story goes that as long as the skull and bones remain undisturbed, the kingdom is safe, but when they're moved, disaster follows. World War I, World War II, and other national crises, all blamed on royal bones, best left untouched. In medieval times, a severed royal head was more than punishment. It was a message. A crown separated from its king showed the world that no man or woman was too holy to bleed. Heads were paraded through streets, stuck on gates, spiked on bridges. London Bridge alone became a grisly forest of heads. Rebels, traitors, and unlucky royals alike were displayed for all to see. Their eyes gone, skin shriveled by rain, birds picking at the flesh. William Wallace, the Scottish freedom fighter, suffered this fate. Though not a king, he led armies like one. In 1305, Wallace was captured, dragged through the streets of London, hanged, drawn, and quartered. His head was dipped in tar and stuck on a pike on London Bridge, staring down at the Thames for years. Heads like these didn't just rot away, they were statements, reminders to the living that power came with a price. Centuries passed, and the heads of kings and queens turned from trophies to puzzles. Forensic scientists, historians, and DNA experts have made careers out of tracking the fragments of royal skulls. When Louis XVI of France was executed during the Revolution, legend says the crowd dipped handkerchiefs in his blood and even took pieces of hair and bone. In the centuries that followed, relic hunters claimed to possess pieces of the king's head. In 2010, a preserved gourd turned up in Spain, said to contain a cloth stained with Louis's blood and possibly bits of his hair. DNA tests hinted at authenticity, but mysteries remain. The same goes for the Romanovs, Russia's last imperial family. When Tsar Nicholas II and his family were executed in 1918, their bodies were buried in secret graves. For decades, no one knew exactly where the skulls lay. Finally, in the 1990s, forensic teams found the remains, but to this day, 2 of the Romanov children's bones, including parts of their skulls, are still disputed and shrouded in rumors of survival and imposters. The hunt for royal skulls is far from over. Every discovery is a piece of a puzzle that links bloodlines, settles ancient debates, and fuels new conspiracies. Why keep a king's skull? Why steal a queen's head? Medieval Europe, relics had power, whether they were bones of saints or pieces of royalty. Some believed a king's head held divine protection. Others thought it could curse enemies or protect loyal families from ruin. During the English Civil War, it's said that bits of Charles I's hair and beard were sold as holy relics. Lockets containing strands of royal hair fetched fortunes among nobles who believed the king had died a martyr. Even today, auction houses sometimes whisper of hidden skull fragments that might once have belonged to a crowned head. Collectors buy them quietly, displaying them in secret studies behind locked doors, morbid trophies of a power long turned to dust. Whether these stories are truth or myth, they remind us of how desperately we cling to the symbols of power, even when the living power is gone. Many royal heads are lost forever, dissolved by time, soil, and secrecy. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs, for example, were buried with elaborate mummification, their heads treated with sacred oils and wraps to preserve the king's divine image for eternity. Yet grave robbers ripped apart these mummies for gold and treasure, scattering skulls across the black sands of the desert. In Asia, two emperors' heads sometimes became objects of worship. The Chinese emperors of the Ming and Qing dynasties were buried in vast tomb complexes, guarded by stone armies and elaborate traps to keep grave robbers at bay. But when looters broke through, many skulls disappeared into private shrines, hidden away by families who believed they carried good luck or deadly curses. So many skulls rest in private collections, museum basements, or secret crypts that even modern historians can agree on how many royal heads are missing today.